After specialising in fire safety in both the NHS and housing, I've picked up a fair few tricks in fire safety and more specifically fire evacuations. Let's jump into the intro and I'll tell you some more about it. What's up peeps, welcome back to Rebranding Safety. Rebranding Safety is the YouTube channel and podcast doing exactly what it says on the tin. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and the bell button and all that magical algorithm stuff. Before we get into it, just a quick shout out to Paradigm Human Performance and more specifically their HSE subscription service who are sponsoring Rebranding Safety YouTube channel and podcast. So thank you very much Paradigm. Let's jump into today's tips for emergency evacuation. Emergency evacuation is a big challenge. It's something that if we don't do right, then going to probably be a really bad situation. But ultimately it's something that's really hard for people to do. To get people to react to the alarms when we need to and as quick as possible is really difficult. These are my 6 tips, that's right, 6 tips on how to get a better emergency evacuation. Tip number 1. Okay, so first things first, we need to be really honest with ourselves in that a drill is kind of something we've taken from the military world. But in the military world, they drill and drill and drill and drill. So they deal with emergency situations all the time and it's kind of second nature. But unfortunately, we probably don't have time to do that. So ultimately, if you want a slick ass emergency evacuation, you've got to drill it more. But we don't have time to do that. So the next thing is we've got to make it hard to do the wrong thing and really easy to do the right thing. So keep your emergency evacuation processes as simple as possible. Now for some, that's going to be hard because some workplaces are naturally really complex and especially working in the NHS, we experience that loads. So ideally the way we want to deal with that is drill more. So think about that balance, that thoroughness versus efficiency is how complex is this? High complexity, drill it more. Low complexity, simple, drill it less if you can. So when we say simple, what do we actually mean? What we actually mean is simple for the human, designed around the human, make it people-centered, make it really easy to do the right thing. How many times we have to say it? You've got to go with human nature. Think that they will go to where they've come from, that automatically the first exit we think of is the one we use all the time. So make it really easy. Think about your signage placement, think about your routes out, think about the alarms, make it really people-centered. Think about how they're interacting with it. Engage with them, ask them questions, watch them when you drill and see what happens and learn and adjust and learn and adjust. Every time I see a drill report, it always just focuses on, oh, Bob didn't get out the building quick enough, so therefore we told Bob and we retrained him. Why didn't Bob get out the building quick enough? That's what you need to know. And don't say it was because he was too busy on Twitter. This brings us really nicely on to Paradigm, because Paradigm Human Performance are human performance experts. They're HOP specialists. But today we're talking about their HSE subscription service. Paradigm Human Performance's HSE subscription service is the perfect solution for those small, medium-sized enterprises that are struggling to keep up with safety. Sometimes it's going to fall by the wayside or you're going to do the bare minimum. Don't beat yourself up, that's life. And that's why Paradigm have produced this package to help you achieve that industry and regulatory compliance, because they know that everything they do is built upon a foundation of compliance. So if you want to have a partner that's going to help you put worker safety as a key part of your DNA, that's going to help you utilize that subject matter expertise of the worker, then this is the package for you. You can get hold of Paradigm Human Performance using the email address and the phone number in the description below, or you can just go to their website. And if you do go to their website, check out the Learning Organisation webinar as well, an outstanding resource. Tip number 2, contrary to popular belief, do not surprise people with your drills. Huh? What? That's what we've always done. Don't tell anyone about their drills. Yeah, just stop and think about this. I understand the logic. We want them to think it's a real drill. Actually, no, we don't. Think about the last time you watch a military film or something like that, right? Or maybe like Avengers, right? You'll hear them go, this is not a drill. This is not a drill. Because they drill so much, they need to differentiate between a drill and emergency. Now, we don't do that. We don't say this is not a drill. We just have the same alarm. So actually, we still need to do the same thing, is differentiate between a drill and real life. So how we do that is we tell them this is a drill. this is a drill. So when they hear the alarm and they haven't been told it's a drill, they assume it's an emergency situation and they evacuate. If you're not telling people and you're just surprising them all the time, especially if you're working on tip number 1 where we're having more drills, they'll just switch off. They'll just switch off from it and just be like, oh, it's just another drill. Or they go, is it a drill? What day is it? Is it Tuesday? We test the alarms on Tuesday. We want them to hear the alarm and go, no one's told me it's a drill. Get out, that's a problem.
That's happened to me before.
See?
Nobody told me there was a drill.
And what did you
I
do?
just sat there and was like, it'll be a drill.
Yeah. And was it a drill?
It was. Yeah, it was. But I didn't know it was.
Exactly. And if it wasn't,
So if
you've
it
just
was-
lost time.
If it was real, is what I'm saying.
You'd have been in trouble.
I'd have been sat there. Because we'd done so many
Yep.
surprise drills
Yep.
that I was just like, whatever.
Makes so much sense. When I say that to people, they're like, yeah, so obvious now.
Yeah, I did exactly that.
That's really bad. So, do more work up front, tell them it's a drill, tell them you're testing the alarm, make sure you're really nailed down on that because it's vital. You get in a common practice of them just going, that's the alarm, I've not been told it's a drill, I need to get out. Tip number 3 is very closely related to tip number 2. They're pretty much one and the same, but this is just an extra bit of perspective, so to speak. So in aviation, there's a thing called alarm hierarchy. So long story short, the computer does loads of algorithm stuff and it works out what's really important right now, and it will just give it like a one flashing light if it's not really that important, but then if it's really like imminently vital to life, everything's going to start flashing. Now think about this from a fire safety point of view. We only really have the fire alarm. So this comes back to the previous point, is that we need to make that really high on the hierarchy so that people think when that goes off, shit's about to hit the fan and we need to get out. A great example of the kind of downside of alarm hierarchy, especially when we combine it with what we've just spoke about, when we're drilling and we're not telling people, people start to pick up their own little alarm hierarchy. So when I worked in manufacturing, we had explosive atmospheres, and because of that, we had automatic shutters. And when we used to do drills and test the alarm, we used to turn off the outputs on the panel so those shutters didn't come down. We didn't want the machines shutting down because it cost us like £7 each time the machine shut down unplanned. We did a drill and the alarm went off, and this apprentice was leaving the building. The alarm was out, he literally downed tools, did what he was supposed to do with the machine, and he was on his way out. And the machine operator, the trained, experienced, competent operator, was coming down with his cups of tea and he went, what are you doing? He went, the alarm's going off. And he went, no, it's not a real alarm, the shutters haven't come down. And in that moment, we realised they'd created their own alarm hierarchy. We left it about 6 months-ish, we did another drill. The next time we did another drill, we let all the shutters come down. We mimicked a real fire as close as possible. What happened? Everyone was out of the building within seconds. They created their own alarm hierarchy. We found that hierarchy and we learnt from it. So the point here is that you need to make the fire alarm high on that hierarchy. So like I said in the last point, drilling is the easiest way to do this. If you're drilling and you're not telling them, you're just devaluing, you're knocking it down that hierarchy. If you've got all the machines going and loads of different alarms, you need to be talking with your employees and working out how we kind of get people to see the fire alarm at the top. But more importantly, observe what happens when the alarm goes out. If you can get somebody else to set the alarm off for you, do a drill and you just loiter in the area and just watch what happens, you'll start to pick up those little idiosyncrasies of what they're already doing and what they're taking seriously and what they're not. And you'll be able to start to work out the self. So this is more just something to keep in mind. Think about where in the hierarchy of alarms is the fire alarm at the moment. So it's more something to be aware of as opposed to installing a really smart AI like they do in airplanes and it does it all for you. If you can do that, great. Tip number 4 is, I call it wargaming, but that's really not a good name because, well, wargaming is an actual thing. But ultimately, gamification or making things enjoyable is really important. Let's say, for example, you want to do, say, 2 drills, but you haven't got the time, you won't get the buy-in from leadership, whatever, or you want to do more than 2 drills and you're not getting the buy-in. How can you kind of do this without shutting all the machines down and so on and so forth? You can make a little game out of it. You can run a workshop, get a map of the building. I have literally made a game about this and run it in training. Rolling the dice, and the wardens would move the person around the map. Each kind of time they rolled the dice would be the number of little moves forward and so on. And we just kept doing that and we were creating scenarios as we were going around, and what would we do if this happened, what would we do if that happened. And that's basically wargaming. What if the enemy reacts this way? What if the enemy reacts that way? If they do that, what happens next? So we basically just kept wargaming it because we couldn't afford to do a full evacuation drill. Other examples are just making it generally enjoyable. Great story, which pretty much everybody's got a similar story, of a team leader, again in manufacturing, standing in front of the door saying, you can't come out this way because I'm a fire, I'm a fire. And one of the operators picked up an extinguisher, squirted him, luckily it was water, and then said, you're not a fire anymore, get out of the way, and they all left laughing. But they all remember that. Making things fun, creating humour, creates a little chemical reaction in the brain, and it attaches that memory and stores it in your brain, and they'll remember it more. Make these things enjoyable. Tip number 5 and tip number 6 combined into one for the sake of your viewership, and you can crack on with your day. And if I waffle, that kind of negates me. I think companies need to be very frank and honest with themselves and ask the question, what are we drilling for? Are we drilling to achieve compliance, tick a box and tell the ISO auditor or the insurer that we've done it? Or are we drilling to achieve success in a life-threatening situation? Which one is it? You probably think it's the latter, but you're probably actually achieving the former. If Grenfell had taught us anything, it's that we're not very good at actually drilling and testing our procedures. They actually normally don't really work in reality because we really don't push them, we don't test them. We live off this naive assumption that it won't happen to us. Once you've had that frank conversation with yourself, hopefully you'll move on to the latter, and you'll go, this is a life-threatening situation and we want to be able to react well in that. And then you can start having some serious conversations. You can start doing that wargaming stuff or learning teams or workshops, whatever you want to call it, and start having honest conversations of how do we fail, e.g. have a fire or an emergency, and fail safely. How do we fail safely? You can start having discussions about what happens if it's this type of fire or that type of fire, or a fire here or a fire over there. What happens if at the same time as this fire, the MEWP's broke and we've got somebody stuck at height? What happens if somebody falls and breaks their leg? You start wargaming these situations that could happen and work out how you react to it with your fire wardens, with your employees, and so on and so forth. You can start talking about, what if it's not a fire? You know, London Underground was flooded a few months back. Have we had conversations around what happens if we get flooded? What about if the tree next door to our factory gets blown over and falls through the roof? In the crazy world we live in, what if it is a terrorist attack, a gun attack, whatever it is? Are you having these conversations? Are you really stress testing your procedures? Or are you just achieving compliance? Okay peeps, thanks for watching. That's been my top tips for getting better performance in your emergency evacuations. I hope you found that useful. Let me know how it goes if you're going to start using this stuff, playing around with it. Maybe you even use this video to convince your leaders or put it in your PowerPoint slides or whatever. Don't call it PowerPoint because then people know you're old. You've got to call it slide decks nowadays. If you enjoyed it, hit like, hit subscribe and all that. Don't forget to check out Paradigm, Human Performance, the Learning Organisation webinar, and also the HC subscription service. Don't forget to check out what we're doing at Project Mollitiam and Rebranding Safety. And ultimately, I'll see you next week in the next video. Safe.